Title, summoned to dinner with my wife's father, the CEO, only to learn I was being replaced by his 18-year-old son after building the company from nothing. He's young, brilliant, and the future leader, he said. Everyone nodded. I smiled and said, I understand. They had no clue what I had planned. Chapter 1. The summons. The restaurant was upscale, draped in rich velvet, illuminated by soft candlelight and buzzing with quiet power deals. I wore my finest charcoal suit, the same one I'd donned a decade ago at the launch of the company we were toasting tonight. A company I'd created from scratch with my sweat, intellect, and every waking moment of my youth. My wife Clara sat beside me, glowing more than usual. Her father, Edward Langston, CEO of Langston Technologies, sat opposite, flanked by his teenage son, Ethan, barely 18 and clean-shaven. As the waiter poured the wine, Edward cleared his throat and flashed a patronizing smile. "You've done stellar work, Daniel," he began, patting my arm like a coach consoling a bench warmer. "But it's time for fresh energy." I froze, wine glass halfway to my lips. He went on, his tone heavy with self-assurance. "Ethan's sharp, driven, and grasps modern tech in ways you can't match. He'll take over as CEO next quarter." Clara avoided my gaze. Ethan grinned like he'd just won a video game. The board members around us nodded like puppets, acting as if this wasn't ludicrous. I was the one who'd built this company from nothing, yet I smiled, composed and unruffled. I folded my napkin and said, "I understand," and I meant it. They had no idea what I'd already set in motion. Chapter 2, more than just a worker. As I slid into my car after the dinner, I didn't swear, didn't break down, didn't even contact my attorney, because I didn't need to. A decade ago, Edward Langston had wealth but no vision, no innovation, no tech expertise. That's where I stepped in. Straight out of grad school with a triple major and a failed startup behind me, I built Langston Technologies from its first line of code to its current billion-dollar valuation. I secured the patents, crafted the branding, designed the infrastructure, trained every lead engineer, selected the CTO, and even wrote the security framework myself. Most crucially, I structured the company in ways Edward never fully grasped. While he was busy golfing and schmoozing, I was drafting joint IP agreements, bespoke software licenses, and hidden equity clauses, all tied to my name through my holding company. Legally, I controlled 51% of the technology powering Langston Technologies. 5 years ago, I'd offered to merge those rights into the company for fair compensation. He refused. "We're family now," he'd said. "No need for complicated contracts." So I didn't press. I let him think he held all the cards until now. They wanted to push me out, replace me with an 18-year-old who invested in crypto and thought AI was cool magic. They had no clue what Wednesday morning would unleash when I'd lock them out of their own kingdom. Chapter 3, Wednesday, 9:00 a.m. Access denied. Asterisk at exactly 8:59 a.m. I sat in my home office, laptop open, a steaming mug of coffee beside me, and a grin I couldn't suppress. I wasn't anxious. The boardroom would be buzzing with executives, junior coders, and naturally, Edward's teenage son, dressed more for a beach party than a corporate meeting. They were set to roll out a new software update. My software, built on a proprietary system never formally handed over to the company. Why? Because I'd seen this coming years ago. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, I clicked a button on my secure server dashboard labeled Initiate System Lockout. One by one, their systems crashed. The boardroom's sleek monitors went dark. Critical dashboards flashed error codes. Customer databases became unreachable. The AI models they bragged about locked, uneditable offline. Then the alerts hit. Error 403, core licensing revoked. Product backend access denied. API key invalid. I leaned back as chaos erupted across their internal chats, emails, and phones. At 9:03 a.m., my phone lit up with a call from Edward himself. I let it ring. Then the texts flooded in. "Edward, Daniel, what's happening? Edward, we can't access anything. Edward, this must be a glitch. Edward, we have an investor call in 20 minutes. And then one from my soon-to-be ex-wife. What are you doing? You're destroying everything." "Fix this." I sipped my coffee and replied, "It's not mine anymore, remember." Chapter 4. The empire falls back in the boardroom. Pandemonium reigned. Edward, sweating profusely, jabbed at his tablet while shouting into his phone. "Get Daniel on the line now." But I was already miles ahead. My number was disconnected, my emails set to bounce. Across from him, his teenage son, the would-be CEO, looked ashen, scrolling uselessly through a dead system. "Dad, is this like a bug or something?" "No," Edward muttered. "This is a disaster." At 9:10 a.m., a message appeared on all screens still linked to the local network. This system, its code, and its proprietary framework are the legal property of Daniel Carter, protected under License Agreement 1031. You dismiss the owner. Good luck. Silence. Then the shouting began. They called it useless. They summoned their legal team too late. I'd already sent the license agreements and patent details to their investors the previous night, with timestamps proving I was never a formal employee, only a contracted CTO who retained ownership of the original framework. All subsequent development was licensed, not owned. By 10 o'clock a.m., the company's lead investor, my old mentor, messaged Edward directly. Asterisk, did you really just fire the only person holding your tech together? We're pulling our funds immediately. At 11:30 a.m., Clara appeared at my apartment, banging on the door. Daniel, open up, please. I didn't, she yelled through the door. You're destroying your legacy. You're acting like a fool, I replied calmly. You said I wasn't worth your time. Turns out I'm worth your entire company. Chapter 5. The fallout goes viral by noon. Headlines exploded. The company's social media was inundated. Not by me, but by ex-employees, partners, clients, and rivals sharing screenshots of the system shutdown, my licensing documents, and the investors' mass exodus. A hashtag trended on X, ousted the creator. Someone posted a meme of Edward shaking hands with his 18-year-old son, captioned Nepotism Speedrun. Day 1 handed an empire. Day 2, empire collapsed. The media pounced. Tech giant sacks its founder, sparks legal chaos. CEO's ego move backfires. Company crippled by hidden license clause. My favorite, sunrise, empire falls. At 2 o'clock p.m., Edward called again. Daniel, enough, let's talk. We can fix this. You were family, I replied coolly. That ended at dinner. You started this when you treated me like I was replaceable. Then I added, by the way, your son just posted a TikTok from the office saying he's done with this and wants to stream video games full-time. Investors saw it. Click. At 3 o'clock p.m., Clara returned, no longer shouting but sobbing. Daniel, I'm sorry. I panicked. I didn't know they planned this. I didn't mean to betray you. I looked at her for a long moment before responding. You didn't defend me when it mattered. You laughed with them. You're only here because your empire's burning. Tears streamed down her face. I messed up. Can we try again? I stepped back, grabbed a folder from my desk, and handed it to her. Here's the real mistake, I said. Signed divorce papers, all assets separated, the apartment lease in my name only. She crumpled to the floor, stunned. Chapter 6. The final play 2 days later, the board voted unanimously to remove Edward as CEO. Their once-proud family empire was bleeding trust and capital. In a leaked boardroom recording, an investor snapped, "We let a teenager steer the ship and he crashed it into a glacier." The company's stock plummeted. Lawsuits piled up. Clients canceled contracts. But me? I was long gone. 3 months later, I sat in Monaco, sipping espresso on a balcony overlooking the harbor. The sun sank into the sea as a sleek yacht bearing my new company's name, ForgeCore Systems, docked nearby. This time, I was the sole owner. I'd quietly built a new firm with a handful of loyal engineers who valued my leadership. We weren't chasing fame. We were delivering innovation, integrity, and results. Investors. The same ones who abandoned Edward's company came to me, offering terms I dictated. Epilogue, a message from her asterisk last week. Clara emailed me. I'm sorry, I miss us. I was foolish. Can we meet? I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Edward, who, per recent reports, was living in a modest home and fighting 3 lawsuits. Final words you don't always need to shout to be heard. Sometimes the best revenge is silence followed by triumph. Never underestimate the person you deem too costly. You might just be signing your company's death warrant. Was this revenge entirely justified? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Like the story if you believe this justice was deserved. Share it with someone who needs this vibe, and subscribe to Lauren's Tales for more gripping stories of betrayal and redemption. Because here, every deception meets its consequence, and every betrayal casts its shadow.